I'm going to cover not just the cash flow, but the return, the cash flow, and an internal rate of return on a rental property that I've had for a bit over a year. So, not only the hypothetical of here's what I thought when I saw the property, but here's what happened after a year. So I can actually compare what I thought was going to happen with what actually happened. Um, and I wish my memory was good enough to know all of these numbers by heart. I have the basics, I know what the return is, but I have some notes that I'll be referring to a little bit as we go so that I make sure that I have my data correct. This was a property I found on the MLS. I used traditional lending, so it was a conventional loan. I did not house hack this property. It was purchased as an investment property. So I've used house hacking twice. And if this is your first time to my channel, if you're watching this in the future after the live recording, the purpose of my content is to help the average individual understand that you can reach financial freedom in 10 years or less, even if you're not starting from the best position, with the goal of making work optional. I was starting from a pretty bad position. I had some bad debt that I actually didn't know about until the divorce. I was a single parent with 3 kids, only making $17 an hour. At about 6 years, I started to reach financial freedom, not financial independence, where I had as much money coming in as I used to make when I was a police officer. At about 8 years, it tripled it. And I'm at the 10-year mark now, and it's more than 4 times. The rental profit is more than 4 times what it cost me to live. So that's kind of the breakdown of coming from not a great position to a position that I'm hoping to bring as many of you to as I can. Because once work is optional, it's not that we're in the FIRE community with, financial independence, retire early. My goal is not to retire early. I'm not even sure I'm going to retire late. My goal was to make work optional so I could choose to do whatever job I wanted without having to consider the money. I did this with buy and hold rental properties. If you found a deal, anything similar to the one that I'm talking about today, and I found a deal like it, I just contacted my agent and made an offer. So, David, if you're watching, good luck. Hope you get a good commission. So, these deals still exist. And the deal I found today is just about exactly the same return as the one that I'm going to cover today. So, I'm hopeful. Still making offers, still looking for properties. If you found a deal like this every 2 years, you don't even need to do 4 or 5 deals a year. You don't need to have hundreds of units. But financial freedom happens with about 4 or 5 properties. So if you found a deal like the one I'm going to talk about every 2 years, in 10 years, you would have 5 of these. And let's see if the cash flow from 5 of those would change your life. I found a triplex. I call it a triplex because I like to buy properties that are 4 units or less. This keeps us in residential lending, which is 30-year fixed rate debt. And you can house hack, which is what I did in a duplex and a fourplex. House hacking is where you reduce or eliminate your housing expenses by either renting out rooms in your place or living in one unit of a duplex or a fourplex and renting out the other units. Basically getting rid of our largest expense, making reaching financial freedom a lot easier and a lot faster. The property that I'm talking about today, I didn't house hack. I saved up the money for the down payment. When I first started, this would have been difficult. My first purchase of a rental property, I did house hack because that lets you put down a smaller amount. Once you have a couple of rental properties, this thing starts to happen that I call the income snowball. Money coming in from cash flowing assets starts to add up so fast that my first properties were a little more than 2 years apart. The next one was a little less than 2 years. And as the income started to grow, the property purchases come down to about once every year. So I talk about getting to 5 properties within 10 years, buying one every other year. The first 4 or 6 years, it's probably going to be something like almost every 2 years you buy a property. The last 4 years, it speeds up a lot. The purchase price of this triplex, and I call it a triplex, and it's a loose translation. Triplex usually means a building with 3 living units in it. What this is a house and a duplex on the same property. It was built in 1929, and there is a little bit of concern with buying a property that's very old. It could have lead-based paint. It could have knob and tube wiring. It could need updated plumbing. It could need foundation work. So during my inspection period, this is when I wanted to make sure I knew when the upgrades happened. The age of the property doesn't really matter to me, but when was the wiring redone? When was the plumbing done? And this was all redone within about 5 years. So it had new roofs, new-ish roofs within 5 years. It had PEX plumbing. It had the new wiring, so it didn't have knob and tube. So it had been updated recently, so I didn't have really much to worry about as far as age of the property goes. I think originally it was a house and they added the duplex to it, and then they built a shed shop that became another house with a 2-car garage. It's a huge house. So not sure which one is the house and which one is the ADU, but it's a triplex, 3 units on one property. The purchase price was $525,000. That was the list price on the MLS. I made an asking price offer. I didn't offer above. I didn't offer less. If something's on the MLS for a long time, we can make offers that are lower than the asking price in the current market, because this property was purchased just a little over a year ago. So it's not like it was from 2011 or 2013 when prices were really low. But $525,000 was the purchase price. Made that asking price offer. It was accepted. I'm not sure, but I did a large earnest money. I think I did a like $20,000 or $25,000 earnest money to get their attention. Might be one of the reasons why the offer was accepted. The other is we can never understand the mind of the seller. You will never know the motivating factors. Most of us as buyers are investors currently in today's market. And we know that if we wanted to sell a property, we would list it on the MLS. We would get as many eyes on it as we can. We would probably use an agent, and we would wait several days to see what offers came in, and then go with the strongest offer, most likely to close, best price, whatever matters to you. That's not what sellers are. A lot of sellers are somebody who bought this property 15, 20, 30 years ago, and they're looking to get out of it. They haven't purchased a property sometimes in decades. They can't believe the home appreciation that's occurred. So they go to their agent. Their agent says, oh, for this, we could probably get, Redfin, Zillow's estimate says, 500, 600,000. So they put it up at 535. The person purchased it for 250,000 decades ago and sits back and is thinking, I don't think anybody's going to pay that amount for my property. I make my offer quick within an hour or two of it hitting the MLS. I submit a letter from my lender saying this is a strong buyer, most likely to close because we've done X number of deals together. So I submit the offer quick. I don't know if other offers came in after mine. That could have been more, could have been cash offers, but I got in quick with a large earnest money. So that was what probably helped me get the deal. The current rents before buying the property. So, well, first let me do the math on, because when you figure out your yield, which is your cash, so in accounting, yield is the return on the money that you invest into an asset. In real estate, it's the cash on cash return on investment. That's the first metric that I look at, and it's just the math, just to see if the math works. My goal is to get a 10% or better cash on cash return. So if I invest $100,000 into a property, I want to profit at least $10,000 a year starting year one. So my goal is a 10%. To do this, Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time talks about learning your market for 60 to 90 days. To figure out the yield, you need to know what the rents in the area are. You need to know what the interest rate is. You need to know what the purchase price is. So interest rates were significantly lower than they are right now. It was like a little over a year ago. I got a 3% interest rate. Right now, to purchase the offer that I made today, I think I'm getting a 4.25 because it's a small multifamily. So you're going to get a little bump over a single family, and I'm not owner occupying. So you get another little bump. But this triplex was also, at the time, 3% was a little higher than what people were getting to buy their homes, because small multifamily, get the bump, not owner occupied, get another bump. The current rents were below area average, and I prefer to buy rent-ready or already occupied properties. I work a full-time job. I run a CDL school called Commercial Driver School in Washington State. We have 4 campuses here, 1 campus in Idaho. I manage about 60 people. I'm pretty busy with work. I work 50 to 60 hours a week. Still a single parent with 3 kids. They're over 18, which would make you think it takes less time to be a parent of those kids, but it doesn't. So my goal is to not buy another job. I want to buy investments. So I don't do the BRRRR method. I haven't done any flipping. I just buy properties that are either rent ready or already occupied that need very little work. So there were tenants in place already. The duplex is 2-bedroom, 1 bath, 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and the house is 3-bedroom, 2 bath. All of this is listed poorly by the listing agent, but I understood the reason why. The duplex is listed as 1 bedroom with a den, 1 bath, each side. The house is listed as 2 bedroom with a den, 2 bathroom. They had to do this because the property's on septic. Septic has a limit to the number of bedrooms that you can have associated with that septic system. So they couldn't list it as the total number of bedrooms that it actually is as a rental. So I recognized that quickly because in my area, dens, family room, bonus room, all of that spells bedroom. The current rents were for the duplex 1,300, and for the house 1,500. If I ran the math with the current rents, so a lot of investors say to only use the current rents because you can't count on rents going up. But I have a binder strategy, which I've actually talked about. I had to get the dirt off of it, but the binder strategy that I used on the property. I'm confident in my ability to get my tenants to request the rents to go up to just under area average, usually within 100 to 150, maybe $170, without having to do a rehab, without having to fix a lot of things. So the purchase price of this property, I put 25% down, and these numbers seem astronomical to me now. They would have seemed impossible when I first started. When I first started, it took me 2 years to save the $20,000 to have the down payment for my first duplex, which was the down payment and closing costs, and then I used my retirement account as a reserve. But with the income snowball, and this is, at the 8 or 9 year mark where I purchased this triplex, the income snowball is happening. So it took me a little over a year to save the down payment for this triplex, which, like I said, took the math, so I don't have to rely on my memory. Purchase price of $525, 25% down was $131,250. When I first started, thinking that I would ever have that much money was mind-numbing to me. I couldn't understand it. That first 4 to 6 years, this seems like it's going to take forever, and this really drags on. And that's when we have to kind of live frugal. We don't have the nice car, fancy trips. Still house hacking because I'm addicted to being paid to live where I do. But those first 4 to 6 years, thinking, hey, you're going to save up $130,000 to buy your next property, I would have laughed at myself. So I saved that money up because the income snowball is happening. So 100% of my income from work is now saved for the next rental, and about 65% of my rental income profit is saved for the next investment. So I saved that money up. There were closing costs. So you have appraisal, inspection, title fees. It was about $10,000. It was less than $10,000, but I'm gonna round up to $10,000 to make the numbers sound a little worse than they were. So average it out to $10,000. And then I did $2,000 in repairs. And I actually did quite a bit less than 2,000 because the place didn't need anything. There was one door jamb that was a little weird, and I think it was either a baseboard heater or a cadet heater or something that didn't work, something really small. But I spend around 2,000 because there's 3 units, and whenever I acquire a new rental, I know I'm going to put in coated Schlag locks on at least 2 doors for the exterior for each unit. And then I put in motion sensor LED lights on the exterior. These are small upgrades that I do that let the tenants know I'm going to be taking care of this place. And I ask the tenants if there's anything that they would like fixed. And usually it's something really small. At the one, it was the door that it caught on the jamb or something. I don't remember because I had a handyman fix it. I had a handyman put in the locks, and I had a handyman put in the lights because lazy. So I spent a little less than 2,000, but we'll say about 2,000. So 131,000 for the down payment, a little more than that, 10,000 for closing costs, 2,000 for immediate repairs. I'm out about 143,000 and some change, so we'll call it 144,000 to purchase. That's my cost to acquire. The equation to figure out your yield is annual profit divided by cost to acquire. Annual profit is, some people say it's your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. That's your expense. Subtract that from your gross rents. And that's missing some things. That's missing setting aside money for future expenses like a roof, a water heater, a vacancy. So I set aside 10% of gross rents into an account for future expenses and 5% of gross rents into that account for future vacancies. So I'm setting aside 15%. I self-manage my properties. If you self-manage your properties, you can set aside money for your own time, but it takes me less than 2 hours a month to self-manage 16 units. So I don't set aside money to pay myself for my 2 hours. If you have a property manager, you're going to want to set aside the amount of money that it costs to have a property manager. And in the beginning, when you only have 1 or 2 units, you're probably going to be paying around 10% a month of gross rents. As your portfolio scales and you have more units, that gives you more negotiating power. So now with 16 units, I have at least 3 different property management companies that have reached out to me and offered me 6% to manage my properties. Someday I may have a property manager, but not today, because we're at odds. Property management companies benefit from tenant turnover because they get to charge for placing a tenant. As an owner, tenant turnover is very expensive. I do everything I can to help limit tenant turnover. It's one of the reasons why the binder strategy works so well for me, is it keeps my tenants happy. My tenants are happy after asking me for sometimes a couple of $100 increase to their monthly rent. So your annual profit is gross rents minus principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, minus, for me, the 15% that I set aside for repairs and maintenance. So the current rents, now remember, my goal is to get a 10% or better cash on cash return. The current rents were $1,300, $1,300, $1,500. 20, I have it written down somewhere here. But the math on that, so 2,600 plus 15, and it's actually 1,550. So that's why I have these things written down. The total month coming in for all 3 units, the actual number that I wrote down was $4,175. So all 3 units combined is $4,175. So one was $1,325, $1,300, $1,550. Those were the existing rents when I took over the property. If I take out my expenses and I take out setting aside for repairs and maintenance, the actual cash on cash return was 12%. So it met my math on, do I want to pursue this property or not? The next thing I look at is the physical aspects of the property. I want to help limit tenant turnover. So I want things like, is there a garage? Is there at least 2 bedrooms per unit? And yes, even though the listing called them dens, there were 2 bedrooms. Washer dryer hookups inside each unit. Side-by-side units. None of these are over under, so tenants don't live above or below another, so there won't be noise complaints. It's in a town called Tumwater in Washington, which is centrally located, really close to the capital. There are several economic drivers around there. The DSHS, the Department of, what is it? DSHS, Division of Social and Health Services, probably. L&I, Labor and Industries, is there. There's a lot of state agencies that work there. The capital is 15-minute drive away. So it's physically located in a place that is at least 10 miles away from all of my other properties, so I'm not pulling tenants from the same sources. And there are several economic drivers in the area, so I'm confident that this is a good way to diversify my portfolio and protect my assets. So it met my math criteria. It met my physical aspects criteria, kind of. My wish list is a garage for each unit, 2 or more bedrooms for each unit, washer dryer hookups in each unit, that they're side by side. So if I ever found one that was over under, but the return was really good and everything else matched, I would still make the offer. At this triplex, the house has a large 2-car garage shop. The duplex doesn't, no garages, but everything else met enough to where it was strong enough for me to make the offer. Let's see where we were at here. So I got a 12% return with existing rents. So I made the offer, got it accepted. The cash flow of that 10% or 12% return was, and I wrote it down. So when I purchased it, it was $1,325, $1,300, $1,550. The total is $4,175. My principal, interest, taxes, and insurance was a little under $2,100, but we'll round it off to $2,100. I'm setting aside $628 a month. That would be 15% of the gross rents, leaving a profit every month of $14,048.25. So in order to acquire the property, my out-of-pocket expense was $143,000. To get my 10% return, this is how quick the math becomes. If I purchase this property, I'm going to spend at least $143,000. That's about what I'm going to spend with closing costs and immediate repairs. I need to make $14,300 a year. That's my 10% return. You could do the math that quick in your head. excuse me, if I'm going to invest 143,000, 10% of that is 14,300. That needs to be my return. If my monthly profit is 1448 times 12, my annual profit is 17,320 or $379. Wrote those numbers down because my memory and my math is not that good. So that's where I get the 12% return. The profit every month added up over the year after setting aside for repairs and vacancy and after paying principal, interest, and taxes and insurance is enough to where the profit, and the really cool thing, one of the main reasons why investing in real estate is one of my favorite things, is because of depreciation and write-offs. In 10 years, I have never paid a penny on income tax on rental profit. I will someday, but I haven't yet. Legally, there is incentive tax programs that help investors buy properties to incentivize us to buy more because we need housing, and I'm going to take care of these places and fix the roof when it needs to happen and replace the windows when they go out, take care of the properties so that people can have a place to live. So they give us tax incentives. So that's what the property looked like at purchase. The cash flow is a 12% return. It was $1,448 a month in my pocket as profit. And I'm setting aside $628 a month into an account that is used for repairs and maintenance. And that account for me, when I first started, when I had 7 units or less, used to go up to 10,000. Now with 16 units, that account is up to 30,000. So anytime it's below 30,000, 15% of gross rents goes in there to fill it up. But when it's full, when it's at 30,000, which it pretty much is every month, that $628 doesn't go into that account. It goes into that account, but it doesn't get counted as the reserve anymore. It goes into the investing fund, part of that income snowball. So while I'm getting a 12% return, the actual cash flow coming in is the 1448 and the 628, unless there's an expense. And at that property, so far in over a year, there has been an HVAC system problem for $550 and a septic problem that cost me about $700. So I have come nowhere as close to spending the $628 a month over that year on the problems with that property. So that's not profit that I would live on and add to my lifestyle because I might need that for the property, but it does go into the investing for the next asset to help speed up that process. I then use the binder method. I wait at least 2 months. This gives me time to put in the coated locks and time to change out the LED lights. It also shows the tenants because I asked if there was anything they wanted fixed. And I think that's how I found out about the heating thing. And they know I'm going to take care of the place. So when I come 2 months later, now I know they pay their rent on time. They don't call me for super trivial things. I haven't had any noise complaints. So I know these are tenants I want to keep. Now I do the binder strategy. So I make a binder, which has a picture of the property on the front of it. It has the really cool thing with this is the front of the binder is right off of Redfin or Zillow or something that shows the property, because this is something the tenants can have access to as well. I paid right here $525,000 November 20th, 2020. That's when the sale happened. So the tenants can know that. Then above that is the Redfin or the Zillow estimate. So Redfin says, even though I paid $525 November 2020, a little over a year ago, so 2 months over a year ago now, it's current value because of appreciation. In most places, we've seen 19% appreciation. In Seattle, which is not where I'm at, we saw 30%. So the appreciation in my area puts the current Zestimate or Redfin estimate, which is never accurate, at $706,000. So the tenants see that the value currently is what I paid and whatever the estimate was when we had the binder talk. Wow, that's a lot of appreciation. I should buy some more properties. I need to make some offers. The taxes increase because I purchased a property which made a factual event that the county tax assessor gets to use to set the taxes. So my tax expense is going to go up. I go to the tenants and I get to say, here are the properties in your area with a map off of apartments.com or any of the other sources of finding tenants, what they rent for. For the 2 bedrooms, the area average there's a bunch for $1,600, $1,550, $1,575, $1,600. So the area average rents at the time I did the binder 2 months after purchasing it. They were at 13. The area average was 16-ish. There were some at the 2,000 range, but those were usually houses that looked really a lot more Class B or Class A than my Class C neighborhood. So the tenants kind of understand that my best financial decision would be have the tenants move out, replace the flooring, paint, fix anything else that I need to upgrade, and rent it out to somebody new at 16 or maybe 1650 because it's now been updated. So I can get a $300 a month increase by spending $7,000 to $10,000, maybe less, maybe $5,000 to $10,000 somewhere in there to have a tenant flip, and the time and the energy that it takes to do that. Lazy. I give the binder to the tenants and I ask, what do you think is fair? They're paying 13. The current area average is around 16. Both sides are now at 15. Those tenants asked for a $200 a month increase. And the first one that asked for 200, they're going to talk. I generally will say in the second binder what the first tenant did so that we end up at the same number. So if they ever talk, since they're basically identical units, they know one of them is not getting taken advantage of. So they both went to 15. The house area average, I think at the time was 1950, 2000. They went to 1800. So rents now 15, 15, 18 instead of 13, 13, 15. At tenants' request, happy tenants who asked for that increase. The current rents are 4,800. Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance stayed the same, the 2,100-ish, because they haven't adjusted much. I'm now setting aside $720 a month because it's part of gross rents instead of the $628 it was before. So my monthly profit now is $1,980. Because I made a binder and I went and I had 3 maybe 20-minute conversations, so 20, 40, 60, an hour's worth of work. Instead of 14 something, I'm now making 19. So that's a $500 a month increase to my income net, because that doesn't increase my expenses. That doesn't increase what it's going to cost to manage those properties, but it does help me save money for future expenses. I will be able to take better care of the property in the future. This gives me purchase price was still the same, $143,000. Monthly profit $1,980. So annual profit is $23,760 with a cash on cash return of like this far, 16.9998, 17% cash on cash return. Purchased with the ability to make a 12% cash on cash return. Binder strategy gets me a 17. Most of my deals I purchased that get around a 6 to 8%, and the binder gets me my 10 to 12%. So this was one of my better deals, and done during the pandemic. So that is the cash on cash and the cash flow. And then the last thing that I want to cover on this information on the cash flow on an actual rental property with a year's worth of data is something called an internal rate of return. When we purchase something, it's not very easy. It's easier to predict the next year's cash flow, because that 12 and 17 are pretty accurate. The thing that we always leave out, because it's a little too good to be true, I collected rents the first month that I owned the property. I collected part of rents that from November 20th to the end of the month, because that is prorated for that month, right? My first payment wasn't until January 1st. So I got 10 days basically worth of rent in November, December's rent from all 3 units, and then had my first mortgage payment. So my return first year is actually a little better than the 12 and 17, but we usually leave that out of the equation because you never know what day of the month you're going to close and how much benefit there is. One of the other reasons why I like to buy already occupied properties is because you start making money before you start paying the mortgage. But an internal rate of return, so we can project cash flow a little easier because we can look up the area average rents and we can estimate really closely what our mortgage is going to be. So estimating that is not that hard, and it gets easier the more you do it. But projecting an internal rate of return forward would be almost impossible. And this is where a lot of syndications run into the problem. They predict things like, oh, we're going to have a 5 to 10% rent increase every year for the next 3 years because we had that for the last 2 years. Can't predict that. But we can figure out an internal rate of return backwards with pretty much accuracy. I know exactly what the cash flow was. I know what the appreciation was. No one knows what the appreciation is going to be going forward. Even the crystal ball isn't sure. And don't drop it because it'll break the floor. Shake the table. Thing's a beautiful projectile weapon. But so we're going to look at the last year. I can actually do the math on an internal rate of return. My cash on cash coming in the last year was $23,760. So that is profit. There has been a thing called principal paydown. Every single month, a part of the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, the mortgage payment, pays down the principal. The total of that over a 12-month period was $8,160. The appreciation, this is why the IRR, internal rate of return, would suck to project going forward. Don't try to do that because we can't count on a 19% appreciation next year. But I know that we had 19% appreciation this year because of the offer I made today, because it's at least 19% higher than what I would have paid for it a year ago. The total appreciation on the property, and it's actually better than this because I purchased it for $525, it appraised at $540. So there was some captured equity right off the bat, but I'm going to leave that out. I'm going to pretend it appraised at $525 because that's what I paid for it. The appreciation in 1 year at 19% is $99,750. This close to $100,000 in appreciation because I owned the property. This is why we need to get on the property ladder. Renting sometimes makes sense, but when you own a property and you're getting appreciation and principal pay down, especially when it's a rental and you're getting cash flow, so those three together in a 12-month period was $131,670. That's not what I make at my W-2. And that's one rental, one property, not one rental, one property out of 7. A 91% return on what it cost me to acquire the property. If I went to sell, there would be agent fees. And since it's a rental, there would be capital gains tax unless I did a 1031. So owning rental properties, when you put in the time and effort to watch content where you learn how to find an area average, how to source your deals. There are more creative ways than to find them than I do. I'm so lazy. I just get the ones off the MLS. I'm not using wholesalers. I'm not sending mailers. I'm not doing all of the strategies that would find better deals. I'm just buying them on the MLS, and I'm using traditional lending. I'm saving up the down payment by avoiding life creep. I don't let my life get more expensive. I'm still house hacking. I live in a unit of a fourplex that is now paying me a little bit more than $2,000 a month to live here. So you add the properties together and the income snowball at the 10-year point. So at the 6-year point, it starts to be life-changing. At the 10-year point, the job becomes finding a place to put the money to work. And I found a duplex today. So it's not as good as finding a triplex or a fourplex, but this duplex is in the right area with the right criteria. It's side by side, garage dividing in the middle. It's the price with the current interest rates and the area average rent. If I get the area average rents, it's a 15% cash on cash return. At current rents, it's about a 10. So it's even a better deal than most of mine usually are. With the binder strategy, I expect to be in the 13% range. Today, finding a deal on the MLS that makes sense, and who knows who's going to win. I can get outbid, but I make 20 offers, get one accepted. I just need to find 19 more deals. And we don't need to find 5 or 10 deals a year to make this successful. I'm buying one every other year in the first 4 to 6 years, and now it's one every year or so. And I actually have a goal to buy at least $1 million property. And I want a fourplex, townhome styles, 3 bedrooms each unit. It'll cash flow right, but I'm not stupid. That's my goal, and I want to do that. But when a deal like this duplex that I found today pops up on the MLS, my offer was in within an hour. So let's see what happens. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.